The clatter of cutlery was the soundtrack of her exhaustion. Alara moved through the Friday night dinner rush at Bistro 22 with a grace that was purely functional, a well-rehearsed dance of taking orders, balancing plates and offering tight, polite smiles. Her feet ached in their worn-out, non-slip shoes, a constant throbbing reminder of the 8-hour shift she had already endured. But the real work, the work that truly mattered, was yet to come. From a secluded booth in the corner, a man named Leo Thorne watched her. To the rest of the staff, he was Leo, the new corporate consultant, a blandly handsome man in a cheap suit sent to evaluate operational efficiencies. They saw a clipboard and a stopwatch. Not the CEO of the global gastronomique empire that owned Bistro 22 and 100 other high-end restaurants. He was undercover, a ghost in his own machine, seeking the unvarnished truth. His eyes, a cool analytical gray, followed Alara. There was an economy to her movements that intrigued him, a lack of wasted motion that spoke of more than just experience. It spoke of necessity. He noted the way her smile didn't quite reach her weary hazel eyes, the way she subtly favored her right side as if carrying an invisible weight. The rush finally ebbed, leaving behind a battlefield of crumpled napkins and half-empty wine glasses. As the other servers began their closing side work, laughing and comparing tips, Alara disappeared into the back. Leo, pretending to study a spreadsheet on his tablet, watched her through the small window in the kitchen door. She stood by the large stainless steel bread station, where the day's remaining artisan sourdough and rosemary focaccia were destined for the dumpster. With a furtive glance over her shoulder, her fingers, quick and sure, began to wrap several loaves in a clean napkin. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of shame and determination. She then tucked the bundle deep into her large, frayed canvas tote bag, zipping it closed as if sealing away a secret. Leo felt a cold disappointment settle in his gut. Theft. Simple, straightforward employee theft. It was the most common inefficiency he found, the most mundane of betrayals. He had fireable offenses on half a dozen managers for less. He should confront her, report her, and be on his way. But something stopped him, the raw, palpable shame on her face as she'd done it. It wasn't the brazen act of a thief. It was the desperate act of a survivor. He waited until she was alone, wiping down the last tables. "Long night," Leo said, approaching her. His voice was softer than he intended. Alara jumped, her hand flying to her chest. "Oh, Leo, I didn't see you there." "Yeah, the Friday crowd is always lively. You handled it well. You're one of the most efficient servers I've observed." It wasn't a lie. A faint pink touched her cheeks. "Just doing my job." He gestured to her bag, which sat slumped by a chair leg. "You forgot your side work. I saw you hadn't refilled the sugar caddies. It was a test." Her eyes darted to the bag, a flicker of panic in their depths. "Right, sorry, I'll get to it now." As she moved to pass him, he took a gentle step closer, blocking her path without being threatening. "Alara," he said, his voice dropping. "I was in the kitchen. I saw you take the bread." The color drained from her face completely. Her shoulders, usually held with a resilient straightness, slumped in defeat. It was over. The job, the meager but vital paycheck, gone. "Please," she whispered, the word a broken thing. "Please don't report me. I need this job. You can take it out of my pay. I'll pay for it. Just, please." "Why?" he asked, the single word laden with more curiosity than accusation. "The food here isn't that good." He attempted a weak joke, but it fell flat. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not a corporate spy, but a person who held her fate in his hands. The walls she kept so high, the fortress around her heart, crumbled under the weight of her exhaustion. "It's not for me," she said, her voice trembling. "It's for my son." The air left Leo's lungs, a son. He had constructed a narrative of debt or frivolity. This was a variable he hadn't calculated. His name is Noah. He's 5. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking, and showed him the lock screen. A little boy with a shock of blonde hair and her same hazel eyes grinned back, a gap-toothed smile that could light up a city. "He has a rare genetic condition. His body doesn't process proteins correctly. He needs a special imported medical formula. The insurance, it doesn't cover all of it." She took a shaky breath. "So every month there's a choice. Do I pay the full copay for his formula, or do I pay the electric bill? Do I buy groceries?" "The bread," It's just to stretch the food budget. So I can make sure he has what he needs to live. Leo stood frozen. The clinical term employee theft evaporated, replaced by the devastating image of a mother making calculations no parent ever should. He saw the frayed cuffs of her uniform, the worn-out shoes, not as signs of carelessness, but as battle scars. The leftover bread, destined for the trash, was her spoils of war. He had come to root out inefficiency and had instead stumbled upon a profound, heartbreaking humanity. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, the words utterly inadequate. "Don't be sorry," she said, wiping a tear away with the back of her hand, a sudden fire returning to her eyes. "Just don't take my job, Noah. He's everything." In that moment, watching this fierce, beautiful, broken woman stand before him, Leo Thorne, the billionaire who had everything, felt a seismic shift within himself. It wasn't just pity. It was a staggering, profound admiration. It was the first terrifying crack of a heart he had kept locked away for years. "Keep the bread," he said, his voice rough with an emotion he couldn't name. "Take whatever you need, and your job is safe. I promise." The gratitude that flooded her face was so bright, so pure, it was almost painful to behold. "Thank you," she breathed. "You have no idea. Thank you." He watched her walk away, her bag heavy with salvaged bread, her spirit heavier with a burden he now desperately wanted to share. The CEO, the man of numbers and bottom lines, was gone. In his place was just a man, completely and utterly captivated. For the next 2 weeks, Leo's undercover mission transformed. His focus was no longer on profit margins or table turnover rates. It was on Alara. He found reasons to be near her, to talk to her. He learned the landscape of her life in fragments, each piece a shard of a beautiful, painful mosaic. He learned she lived in a small apartment across town, a place she called the Cozy Cave. He learned she painted with Noah on weekends, their masterpieces taped proudly to the refrigerator. He learned she read him stories about knights and dragons, her voice his shield against the scary real-world monsters of IV drips and doctor's appointments, and with every discovery, Leo fell deeper. He arranged for a corporate wellness bonus to be discreetly added to her paycheck. He started leaving a single perfect apple on her station every morning. Their conversations grew longer, filled with easy laughter and shared glances that lingered a second too long. He found himself inventing flaws in the bistro's operation just to spend more time with her, to bask in the quiet strength she radiated. Alara, in turn, began to thaw. Leo was different. He was kind, he listened, and he looked at her not with the pity she'd come to dread from social workers and nurses, but with a deep, unwavering respect that felt like a balm on her soul. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Not as a patient's mother, not as a struggling waitress, but as a woman. One rainy Tuesday, as they were closing up alone, the truth of his identity clawed at his throat. He couldn't lie to her anymore. "Alara, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his heart thundering. He led her to his booth, the very one from which he had first judged her. "I'm not who you think I am," she smiled, a gentle teasing curve of her lips. "What, are you a secret millionaire or something?" The silence that followed was deafening. Her smile faded as she saw the utter seriousness on his face. "Or something," he said quietly. He pulled out his real wallet, removing a black titanium card embossed with the gastronomique logo, and his name, Leo Thorne, CEO. Her eyes scanned the card, then his face, then the card again. The color drained from her skin. The cozy intimacy of the last 2 weeks shattered, replaced by the cold, hard reality of the laminated rectangle on the table between them. "CEO," she whispered, the word a death knell. She pushed back from the table, her chair scraping harshly against the tile. You're him, the owner. You've been, what, slumming it? Doing research?" The hurt in her voice was a physical force. "Was my life your little case study? Was my son's illness just a footnote in your report?" "No, Alara, God, no." He reached for her, but she flinched away. "It started that way. But then I met you. I heard your story. Everything changed." "Changed?" She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Nothing has changed. You lied to me. You let me feel." She couldn't finish, her voice cracking. She had started to let him in, started to believe in a different kind of future, and it had all been built on a foundation of deception. "I fell in love with you," he said, The words raw and honest laid bare before her. "Don't," she spat, tears finally streaming down her face. "Don't you dare. You don't love me. You love the idea of the tragic waitress you can rescue. Well, I don't need a rescue, Mr. Thorne. I just needed to be treated like a person. And you failed." She stood grabbing her bag, the same bag that had started it all. "I quit." She fled into the rain-soaked night, leaving Leo alone in the silent bistro, the CEO card sitting on the table like an accusation. He spent the next 3 days in a fog of self-loathing. His empire felt like a gilded cage. He tried to call, to text, to explain, but his messages went unanswered. He drove past her apartment, but her lights were always off. She had vanished. On the 4th day, a determined, desperate Leo Thorne went to the one place he knew he could find the truth. He walked into the pediatric wing of the city hospital, using his real name and a donation large enough to make the administrator stammer, to get the location of Noah's room. He found it at the end of a quiet hall. The door was ajar. He peered inside, his breath catching. Ilara was there, asleep in a chair by the bed, her head resting on the mattress. She looked pale and exhausted. And in the bed, connected to a monitor that beeped a soft, steady rhythm, was Noah. He was smaller than in his pictures, fragile, with a breathing tube taped to his face. But it wasn't the sight of the sick child that made Leo's world tilt on its axis. It was the man on the other side of the bed. He was tall, with kind eyes and a doctor's white coat. He was gently adjusting Noah's IV, his movements practiced and tender. Then he reached out, and with a familiarity that spoke of deep intimacy, he brushed a stray strand of hair from Ilara's sleeping forehead, his wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. Leo stood there paralyzed. The pieces of the story he thought he knew, the struggling single mother, the desperate fight alone, shattered and rearranged themselves into a completely different picture. The doctor looked up, sensing his presence. His eyes, a warm brown, met Leo's confused gray ones. There was no hostility in them, only a deep, profound sadness. "Can I help you?" the doctor asked, his voice quiet so as not to wake Ilara. Leo couldn't speak. He could only stare at the man, at the wedding ring, at the sleeping woman between them. The doctor followed his gaze, understanding dawning on his face. He gave a small, weary sigh. "You must be Leo," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm Dr. Ben Carter." He paused, his thumb stroking the back of Ilara's hand. "Her husband,